Hey, what's up guys, and welcome to 31 Preserver, the Primalist Tank Healing Soul. Preserver has a really fun playstyle and introduces a new type of gameplay that is unique to the Primalist. In this guide I'll show you where to put your soul points, which masteries to select, as well as how to play Preserver, so let's go ahead and jump right in. Looking at the soul tree breakdown, you'll see we do the full 31 points in Preserver. They are going to introduce a raid healing soul later on that'll probably make for some pretty cool hybrids, but for now in a healing configuration you're going to want to have 31 points in Preserver. For the secondary and tertiary souls, we go 4 in Vulcanist for the 16% attack power and weapon damage that it provides, and 4 in Dervish for the 16% attack power and weapon damage that it provides. For the masteries, level 61, we take Primordial Strength. This is going to allow your critical hits to apply a 3% maximum health shield once every 6 seconds. Pretty standard stuff. Most callings get something like this at level 61. Level 62, we take Forest Matron. This one increases the healing done and absorption granted by 5%. Level 63, we have two big options here. We have Ursine Tenacity, which is going to make your Nurture and Naturalize be able to be channeled while moving. This is pretty huge because Nurture is going to be one of the main spams that you use in this build. So I would recommend that you go Ursine Tenacity. However, if you require the 100% health return res, you can also take Leonine Ferocity as well. Moving up to level 64, we take Ethereal Meditation. This is going to make your Cultivate heal twice as rapidly. Cultivate is one of your healing over time abilities, so this makes it very, very strong. Level 65, we take Nature's Blessing. This restores 700 health to the allies affected by the Primalist Nature's Blessing whenever the Primalist casts a single target heal. So basically, this is Divine Favor. It's the Primalist version of Divine Favor from the Cleric. How it works is you'll cast it on yourself, and then you'll be able to cast it on 3 other members of your party. And every time you cast a heal, it will heal them for approximately 2400 or so. So pretty straightforward there. Alternatively, if you want a strong tank cooldown, you can also pick Ancestral Force. Now, typically in a raid environment, that's probably what you're going to be doing is using Ancestral Force because Nature's Blessing isn't as strong as Ancestral Force would be for mitigating tank damage. So that's it for the Souls and Masteries, guys. Let's go ahead and talk about the macros briefly. So looking at the macros starting at the top, a lot of the reason that we have so many macros in a healing build is because you need to use the @MouseOverUI. I say need, you don't have to, however it makes it very, very convenient to heal with. For those of you who aren't familiar with the @MouseOverUI and what it does, this little line right here will make it so that I can hover my mouse cursor over whoever's name I want to and hit the 1 key and it will fire off that ability at that person without me actually having to swap targets. So kind of just one of those convenience things. You don't necessarily have to do that if you don't want to. So moving on down, we have the, excuse me, this is your Nurture macro. This is just the mouse over. We have the Cultivate, which is just, again, a mouse over. We have the single target healing macro here with Inundate and Deluge in it. Now, Deluge is just there for movement. Typically, you're only going to be casting Inundate from this macro. You'll be casting Deluge from the following macro. This one right here is your Battle Res macro, standard there. Up at the top, we have your Serenity. This is going to be a target yourself, target Ghrok. Cast at GTAE, so it'll cast it on your location, and then target whatever you were targeting before. So one press of this macro will drop the Serenity right on your feet, and then retarget whatever you had targeted previously. Now, alternatively, you don't have to use a macro for this. You can plop it down manually if you want, but I like using this to keep it around me. But in certain instances, you definitely would want to manually manage that. Moving on down, we have a couple of the cooldown macros here. This one has a negative 30%. A lot of the times when I make macros for cooldowns, it's specifically just to label them so I can remember what they do while I'm learning a build. So this guy right here, of course, is just going to have a mouse over UI and a minus 30% tag because this one right here will reduce the damage of the person that you cast it on by 30%. That's where the 30% comes from. Moving on down, this one says crit, of course, because it increases your critical hit chance for healing and damaging abilities by 100% for 12 seconds. So this one is just literally, it's a cast Primal Avatar Deer Spirit. The only reason I have this macro is so I can label it crit. Moving on down, we have this one's called Essence Flow. This one right here is so it'll cast the cooldown for you off global cooldown, and then you'll have a mouse over Inundate so you can continue to hit your R key, which is where this macro is at, and it will fire off your instant double healing Inundates. Moving on down, we have the Ancestral Force macro. This is simply, again, just a mouse over. Up to the top right, we have the single target cleanse macro. This is pretty straightforward. This will make it so that if somebody in your raid has something that needs to be cleansed and you hit this macro, it will automatically find that person and cleanse them. Moving on down, we have the Restore. This is very, very similar to how Sterilize works with the Purifier Soul and the Cleric Calling. This will remove all diseases and poisons, so it's simply on a mouse over UI here. Alternatively, you can also set it up like the single target cleanse macro, and instead of having it say cleanse here, you can have it say restore. And then that way you don't actually have to click on anybody or hover over anybody. You can literally just tap that macro. Now, where that would not be beneficial is if you have multiple cleanse mechanics going on. You don't want to hit that because it'll just hit the first person that it finds that needs to be cleansed. So that's it for the macros, guys. Not a whole lot. Like I said before, it's a lot of just at mouse over UI modifications there. So now that we talked about macros, let's go ahead and go down and talk about the action bar a little bit. So up in the upper left, we have Font of Vitality. Now, one note about Font of Vitality is the main reason you pick it is because it reduces the cost or the cast time of your next ability by 0.5 seconds. Now, this doesn't seem like much, but when you couple this with the ability you get from here, Hasty Blossoms, this reduces it by 1.5 seconds. So 1.5 and 0.5 from Font of Vitality gives you an instant cast Inundate. Now, the instant cast Inundate is nice. However, if you want to pick up an extra 5% healing increase and 5% damage increase, instead, you can hit Font of Savagery. Now, if you're not familiar with Primalist, you can only have one font buff active at a time, but this one will give you higher tooltips, and this one will give you more instant cast Inundates. So short story here is that if you have a lot of movement, it's going to be better to take Font of Vitality in raid. If it's a real stationary fight, it may be better to pick up Font of Savagery for the increased healing that you get. So moving over here to the right, we have Nature's Blessing. We already talked about this briefly. How this works is you'll cast Nature's Blessing on yourself. You'll get the Nature's Blessing buff. It'll change this buff to the same name, but it'll be a different icon. You'll click on 3 people in your group and apply Nature's Blessing to them. That's pretty easy stuff there. Moving on to the secondary bar, we have Ancestral Force on the Z key. This is going to be a really strong tank healing cooldown. You can only have this one or this one active at a time, not both. Moving over to the Q keybind, we have Invigorate. Again, this one is going to reduce the damage that the player that you cast it on takes by 30% for 10 seconds. And also, each second for that 10 seconds, it'll heal them for 25% of their missing, that's the key word there, missing health. Which means if they have 50% health, they're going to heal for, the first take's going to be like 12.5% or something like that. So it's only going to heal for the remaining health, and it's cascading, so it eventually gets smaller and smaller and smaller until they get to pretty close to full health. On the E keybind, we have Primal Avatar Deer Spirit. If you're not familiar with Primalist, every Primalist soul has a Primal Avatar type of cooldown. This one is on a 1-minute cooldown. It will increase the critical hit chance with your spells by 100% for 12 seconds. And it also applies the Cultivate heal over time to 10 party or raid members. So pretty strong stuff there. Not crazy burst AoE healing or anything, but it definitely will help you when you're in trouble. Moving over to the right, one more. We have on the R keybind, Essence Flow. It's on a 45-second cooldown. This is going to increase the healing of your next 3 Inundates. That's this guy here on the 3 key. By 100%. While active, Inundate's cast time is also reduced to instant. So you have 3 instant cast double healing Inundates with that cooldown there. And again, it's on a 45-second cooldown, so feel free to use rather liberally. And over to the right, one more, we have Serenity. This is going to create that Field of Life energy, which restores about 6,000 health over 15 seconds. So not huge, but it does have a pretty big range there, as you can kind of see. So just basically pop this down. If you're disconnected from your group, you may want to turn towards them and manually plop it down on the raid party. But I usually like using the GTAE macro because it's easier to manage. Moving down to the main bar, we have the Nurture/Naturalize macro here. If you target somebody you can heal, like a party member, it'll be Nurture. If you target an enemy, it'll be the Naturalize, which is the damage version. So this guy right here is going to be a really important part of this build, and what it does is it'll build up 5 stacks of Blossom, and it will also heal each tick. So it's pretty strong stuff, and again, you can move with it with your mastery that you reselected. So pretty strong stuff. We'll talk more about this in the rotation section and how all these abilities work with each other as well. So number 2, we have Cultivate. This is a strong healing over time ability. As a bonus, you also apply Hasty Blossom, which gives a buff for each Blossom stack. Remember we talked about Blossom with Nurture on the target ally. This will reduce your cast time of your next spell by 0.3 seconds per stack. You can have 5 stacks total. That means 1.5 second reduction. Moving over to the right, we have Inundate. This is a 2-second cast, but if you cast your Cultivate with 5 stacks of the Blossom on it, it'll become a 0.5 second cast after a Cultivate. So pretty strong stuff there. Again, we'll talk more about this later. On the 4 key, we have Deluge. This is going to apply a 2,000 or 20,000 health heal. However, with our 31 points in Preserver, it will also apply a 20,000 health shield. So pretty cool stuff. The shield component of this matches the healing component. So pretty good stuff there. As a bonus, this will also make the next spell that you cast have a 20% chance to critical hit, and also applies 5 stacks of Blossom. So this one right here is going to be a key ability for tank swapping, stuff like that, to apply 5 stacks of Blossom really quickly. Moving over to 5, we have Estuary. This is going to be a kind of lackluster AoE healing cooldown on a 20-second cooldown. Quite honestly, if it was up to me, I'd probably reduce the cooldown on this to like 5 seconds or something like that, because it's not very strong as it stands. However, it is there just in case, mostly used for dungeon healing in my experience, but it is there just in case. On 6, we have Emanate Life. This is going to be your standard battle res. On 7, we have Vine Whip. This is going to be a damaging ability. Keep in mind that with 31 points in Preserver, every time you cast a damaging ability, it is going to increase your next ability's healing by 9%. Same thing with healing. If you use a healing ability, it's going to increase your next damaging ability by 9%. So it's kind of like a weird little interaction that you have with your damaging and your healing abilities there. So moving over to 8, we have the single target cleanse macro here. On 9, we have the sterilize macro type deal here. It's actually called restore in Primalist, but it does the same thing as sterilize. On the middle click or the 0 key, we have ablution. This is going to be your AoE cleanse. And on the minus key, we have a break free that's also a teleport. And of course, equals key is going to be your standard break free. Now that we talked about the action bar, we're going to go ahead and talk about KAlerts briefly. So looking at the KAlerts here, we have about 7 that we track. Go ahead and hit edit layout to show you. Over here on the bottom left, we have one of the most important mechanics of Preserver, and that is going to be your blossom stacks. You're going to want to try and keep that at 5 at all times on whoever your tank that you're healing is. Moving over to the right one more, we have the Cultivate, the Cultivate proc here. When you cast this with 5 stacks of blossoms, it gives you a buff called Hasty Blossom, which reduces the cast time of your next ability by 0.3 seconds per stack of blossoms. So if you have 5 stacks of blossom, of course, that's a 1.5 second reduction. So pretty nice stuff there, especially if you follow it up with an Inundate. Over to the right here, you can see we have this ability that's kind of tucked in neatly behind the Inundate proc here, and that is going to be your Essence Flow stacks. So each one of these different stacks is going to be worth a double healing Inundate and also make it instant cast. So that's just a way you can kind of track that. And that'll, of course, overwrite your Inundate proc. So moving up to the top left, we have actually the Cultivate tracker here. This one's just going to track your healing over time ability. And over to the right here, every time you cast a Inundate, a Deluge, or also an Estuary, you get a buff that increases your healing by 9% for 10 seconds. So as long as you're using a relatively liberal Deluge / Inundate rotation, you'll have 100% uptime on that. It's a pretty big deal. Moving up to the top here, you can see we have the 2 different cooldown trackers here. What these are going to do is this guy is going to track your Invigorate. If you remember before, Invigorate is going to reduce the damage that the ally takes by 30% and heal them for 25% of their remaining health per second. So pretty strong stuff there. It's just there so I can track it so I know what's going on right next to my character. And then up to the top here, of course, we have the Primal Avatar Deer Spirit. This is going to increase your critical hit chance by 100% and also put up Cultivate on 10 different members of your party. So pretty strong stuff there. So that's it for the KAlerts, guys. Now let's go ahead and discuss how to play Preserver. As most of you probably know, with healing builds, it's not typically a hard and fast rotation because you have to be relatively reactive to the environment that you're playing in. However, there is a little mini rotation you can use that will help you kind of maintain your blossom stacks and maintain your abilities on your tank. So to start this off, the first thing you usually are going to want to do, depending on how your fight is going, is you're going to want to channel your Nurture to 5 stacks of blossoms. Now this is going to do multiple different things for you. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to increase the tank's hit points by 2.5% after you have 5 stacks of blossom. It's also going to increase the healing incoming to the tank by 5%, as well as giving you conservation. Now what conservation does is 20% of the overhealing that goes to that target with 5 blossoms is going to be spread to 5 members who are around him. So this is going to be really awesome, especially for group content. And lastly, it also applies Germinate. Germinate is going to reduce the damage that player takes, that tank takes, by 6%. That's a pretty hefty mitigation. So all of that just by pressing 1 click. Pretty strong stuff there once you get to the 5 blossom stacks. Also, alternatively, once you hit Fury, which is 40 points of Fury or higher, you get an extra healing over time ability that's going to apply anytime you hit the healing ability. And if you're in Cunning, which is going to be 40 Cunning or greater, that's going to apply a shield instead. So that's kind of the interaction with the Fury and Cunning bar. You either get a healing over time ability with Fury, or you get a shield when you're in Cunning. So pretty strong stuff for Nurture. So once you've done that and you've got your 5 stacks of Blossom up, after that you're going to want to pop your Cultivate. Now Cultivate's going to be a pretty crazy healing over time ability, but it's also going to proc Hasty Blossoms, which is going to give you that 1.5 second reduction in cast time. So once you have that, hopefully you've crit by that point. If you're in a raid, you likely have, and your Font of Vitality's 0.5 second reduction will also be up. And then your Inundate will be instant cast. Now from this point, typically I will rotate Inundate in at least once every couple rotations just to ensure that you keep up that plus 9% healing buff. But you don't necessarily have to. You can keep just spamming your Nurture until the heavy tank damage comes if you need to. So once you pop this Inundate, of course, you go right back to your Nurture spam and keep hitting that until your Cultivate is back up. And you can hit Cultivate again to get your instant cast buff up, and then use Inundate again. So that's kind of the basic rotation, is 1, 2, and then 3 after you have 5 stacks of Blossom. Now there's a couple other different things that you can do here. For instance, if you're coming up on some big tank damage, you're going to need a bigger heal, you can do your Nurture first to 5 stacks of Blossom. You can do Cultivate for the instant cast, and then you can go and use your Deluge instead. Now what your Deluge is going to do for you is it's going to apply 5 stacks of Blossoms if you don't already have it, so this is fantastic for like tank swaps and things like that. But it will also increase the 20 or the crit chance of your next ability by 20%, as well as applying a 20,000 health and 20,000 shield ability as well. So if you pop that after you use your Nurture and your Cultivate, then you can go straight into your Inundate, and your Inundate will have a 20% increased chance to crit, and you're likely going to have a very big heal there. So that's a way you can kind of chain your abilities together and not have to blow cooldowns if your tank's taking a little bit of increased damage. So looking at the cooldowns up here, you have, of course, Ancestral Force. You guys have seen this one before. As soon as you cast this, it's going to shoot at the healing, well, I guess not the healing dummy, but at whoever your tank is, and it'll heal them for 50% of their max health every second for 3 seconds. So pretty strong stuff there. Currently, this is actually bugged and not working in a lot of different instances, but I'm sure they'll have it fixed by next week. On the Q key, of course, you have Invigorate. This one is pretty strong for the damage reduction. I like to use this one actually relatively preemptively, so if you have CFAs coming up, you know you're going to be taking a bunch of damage. You can pop this because it does last 10 seconds, so as long as you time it right, this is going to be really awesome to have on the tank during that phase. Also with Primal Avatar Deer Spirit, you have to kind of feel this one out. This one it's a strong cooldown, but you need to use it with other abilities to really utilize what it has. I like to use this one with Essence Flow because it makes all of those crit as well as them being 100% extra healing, so pretty strong stuff there. And then of course you also want to always put your Serenity down. You can do that first if you want to. So let me just show you what that kind of looks like here for a second. So we got this guy right here targeted. So the first thing we're going to do, of course, is hit our Nurture. You're going to see your Blossom stacks get up to 5 here. You can see we've already applied a whole bunch of different debuffs there. So we're going to hit Cultivate. That's going to apply your Hasty Blossoms and also your Cultivate and Conservation buff there, so you can get all your overhealing. And after that, you're going to hit your Inundate, which is a 0.5 second cast. And now you have your 9% healing buff up there. So at that point, you'll go back to your Nurture. Of course, you'd be casting this a lot faster than what I'm doing. So your 5 stacks would be constantly be refreshed, of course. So you see now we go back to, yeah, you don't want to hard cast Inundate, but you go back to Nurture and you'd have the 5 stacks again. Now, alternatively, like I said before, you can also go to your Deluge and you can pop that, which will pop a pretty big shield, and then go back to your Inundate, which would be instant cast from your Cultivate, and that'll be a nice little big heal for you as well. So kind of a way you can chain some really big heals together is if you make sure you have your 5 stacks, use your Cultivate, and then you can use your Primal Avatar Deer Spirit and your Essence Flow, and then watch how much heal this does. 80k, 93k, 90k. So you can see my gear is not that great, and I just popped 3 almost 90k heals in a row with a 45-second cooldown and a minute cooldown. So that's pretty strong healing ability to do once every minute. And you also still have Invigorate cooldown, and you also still have your Ancestral Force cooldown, as well as your other strong abilities down here to maintain the tank. But pretty strong stuff, guys. If you have any questions, as always, please leave a comment. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.